the council meetings is to do the city's business, including hearing from the community on issues of concern. In order for us to hear from everyone and to give due consideration to matters before the council, we all endeavor to preserve the order and decorum of these meetings. To make sure that the process is clear for everyone, I want to review some of the basic guidelines, which I hope will help everybody feel comfortable, welcome, safe, and respected at the meeting, and also ensure that decorum is maintained. There are two opportunities for public participation. First, we have the opportunity for people to sign up for communications to speak about any subjects they wish to address. These items must be scheduled in advance with the clerk's office. Second, people may sign up for public testimony on the first readings of reports, resolutions, and ordinances. If you sign up, your testimony must address the matter being considered at the time. Please state your name for the record. We don't need your address. If you're a lobbyist, please disclose that. And if you're here representing an organization, please disclose that as well. Individuals typically have 3 minutes to testify unless otherwise stated. When you have 30 seconds left, the yellow light in the center there will flash. When your time is up, the red light will flash. Conduct that disrupts the meeting, for example, shouting or interrupting other people's testimony or interrupting during council deliberations, is not allowed. People who disrupt the meetings face ejection from the meeting. If there is a disruption, I'll issue a warning that if a further disruption occurs, anyone who's disrupting the meeting will be subject to ejection for the remainder of the meeting. Anyone who fails to leave the meeting after being ejected will be subject to arrest for trespass. If folks would like to show your support, please do a thumbs up. If you want to not support, thumbs down. Thank you, and we'll get the council session started. We have a couple of complications today in the form of we are missing 2 people, so we will skip the consent agenda until we get to 11-ish, 11 o'clock. We are not yet at the point where we can do time certains. So with that, yes, Commissioner Fish.
I move that we pull items 350, 351 and put them on the regular agenda. That gives us an extra level of insurance.
Commissioner Fish moves that we pull items 350 and 351.
Second.
We have a second. Any further discussion? Hearing no objections, so done. And with that, why don't we start with the regular agenda, assuming that we have... Oh, the proclamation. How could I forget the proclamation? This is an important moment.
So we have kids outside. You want to...
Let's bring in the kids.
That's not my proclamation.
And in the meanwhile, I will thank you for reminding me of that. I would have been embarrassed to forget that.
Would you like me to read it?
Yeah, Commissioner Fritz, please read the proclamation.
Thank you, everybody. A proclamation that's been signed today by Mayor Wheeler. Whereas emergencies can occur at any time and require police, fire, or emergency medical services, and whereas when an emergency occurs, the prompt response of police officers, firefighters, and paramedics is crucial to the protection of life and preservation of property. And whereas the safety of our police officers and firefighters depends on the quality and accuracy of information obtained from Portlanders who call 911, and professional public safety communicators are a vital link between Portlanders and first responders. And whereas public safety telecommunicators monitor the activities of police officers, firefighters, and emergency medical personnel by radio and provide them with information while seeking to ensure their safety. And whereas, according to the Association of Public Safety Officials International, National Public Safety Telecommunications Week was initially conceived in 1981 by Patricia Anderson of the Contra Costa County Sheriff's Office in California, and Congress formally designated the week in 1991. And whereas public safety communicators at the City of Portland's Bureau of Emergency Communications have contributed substantially to the apprehension of criminals, suppressions of fires, and life-saving treatment of patients experiencing medical and mental health emergencies. And whereas telecommunicators in the Bureau of Emergency Communications exhibit compassion, understanding, and professionalism while performing a crucially important job as Multnomah County's first responders. Now therefore, Ted Wheeler, Mayor of the City of Portland, Oregon, the City of Roses, does hereby proclaim April 9th to 15th, 2017 to be National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week in Portland and encourages all residents to observe this week. And if I might just add, as the Commissioner in charge of the Bureau of Emergency Communications, our staff work as hard as possible 24/7 to make sure that response is prompt and accurate. And we last week had an outage which has only, it's the first time it's happened in 20 years. The interim director, Lisa St. Helens, has been in the Bureau, and they scrambled to make sure that they got back up online as quickly as possible. It's been a good lesson for us all that we need to have many more redundancies built into the system in the case of emergencies. So we will be moving forward with that. And in the meantime, the frontline operators are truly the first responders a lot of the time, and I very much appreciate and am honoured by just serving as their commissioner. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Any further comments on this proclamation? Any further testimony? Great, thank you. Commissioner Fish, did you have a motion?
Mayor, because we have some young people with us today who also are away from school, I move that we suspend the rules and bring the Fair Housing Month proclamation forward.
Any objection?
What number is that, please, Commissioner Fish?
It's 347.
Thank you.
Do you want, why don't we do the proclamation first so the kids can go to school? That should be our
do
priority at the
that.
moment, and then we'll do the
We can do that.
communications.
No objection.
That's a 10 a.m. time certain.
Yeah, we just suspend the rules, Carla.
Don't we need 4 people to suspend the rules?
Well, the City Attorney is pointing out you need 4 people to suspend the rules, so we can't do that. So maybe we could do communications first, and that'll get us to 10 o'clock.
Okay, very good. Good idea. So for the children with us, we'll ask for a few more minutes of patience. We appreciate your being here very much. So with that, we'll move to communications. Is Donna Hayes here yet? I do not see
I
her.
believe they said she's on her way. Yep.
Very good. Okay, very good. When she gets here, we'll accommodate her. First item, please.
Item 341, request of Sarah Laura to address council regarding Madison South neighborhood, seek a permanent solution to the homeless camp on Broadway, Jonesmore.
Is Sarah Laura here? I do not see Sarah. Next item, please.
Item 342, a request of Dominic Kukla to address council regarding civic education.
Next item, please.
343, request of Charlie Matuk to address council regarding challenges small businesses face in downtown neighborhoods. He had to work today, he's not able to make it.
Next item, please.
344, request of Keith Ketterling to address council regarding the city housing shortage, crime, drugs, and homelessness issues.
Mr. Ketterling, good morning.
Thank you. My name is Keith Ketterling. I'm the managing partner of the Stolburn Law Firm.
Put the mic a little closer.
I'm the managing partner of the Stolburn Law Firm. We have 18 lawyers with the old police headquarters building. A few weeks ago, our building was broken into and burglarized. And my office in particular was burglarized and credit cards taken, personal information taken. And in a kind of ironic twist, the man who broke in was so high that he couldn't figure out how to get out of the building. And he didn't see the green button to push to leave, and so he was still there when the police showed up in the morning. And that caused so much unsettlement among our employees that we've talked about whether we should move out of downtown Portland. And our landlord improved our building security, and we've hired a security guard, the tenants have, to be in the building, but that's not really the solution. And I talked to our landlord, I said, you know, we don't want a compound. We don't want to have just some place where we're safe, but we can't leave the building. My employees have a hard time going to lunch, running errands, going for a run during lunch because there's so much drug problem around our area and so much homelessness. And I think that Portland needs to consider how to have more beds, more shelters, shelters for families with pets, prioritize funding for mental health services, for drug and alcohol addiction. We need more secure, permanent, affordable housing for those who are homeless or have housing insecurity. We need to support families that are in homes or in apartments, help them pay their rent, keep them from slipping into homelessness. It's simply not good enough that we say we don't have the money. The cost to Portland and the damage to Portland in terms of livability and the resulting loss of businesses far exceeds what we would spend to take care of these problems, and we need to address them. And I know that the council is very concerned about that. Mayor Wheeler has outlined his plans for those issues, and we support those. With spring and summer coming, we tend to, I think, become more complacent because the homeless aren't out in the cold. It's warmer. But we need to address these issues now. And we need to support the mayor and the issues of homelessness and drug addiction in our city because it affects the businesses in our city. It affects our desire to stay here. And in the end, that affects Portland's livability overall. So I know the council's concerned about this. Just ask you to keep this on the very front of your decision making because it's very important to the businesses and the people that live here in Portland.
Thank you, Keith,
Thank
and we
you.
appreciate your coming in today. Thank you.
Keith, can I just ask you a quick question since
Yes.
you did show up today and I guess we're going to have two communications. How many employees do you have in your office downtown?
So we have approximately 38 people that work for us.
And do you have a sense of what percentage of those people live in Portland versus people who commute from outside of Portland?
It's about 50-50.
Okay, and I know the building that you work in. It's the old police building, and it's across the street from an outdoor store.
Yes.
And there was a gentleman that used to work in the outdoor store who, a couple of years ago, was taking some garbage out or bringing garbage in, and was attacked, and he was assaulted, hit in the head, had a very severe injury, ended up retiring. So the safety issues you're talking about are issues that impact everybody, the people who are outside on the streets as well as the people who are working. And that particular 2 or 3 block area has some challenges. I believe there's still an undeveloped lot adjacent to your property, is that correct?
Yes, and I think it's owned by a foreign corporation.
Well, so that is a kind of an attractive nuisance because there's no development on that corner.
Yes.
I think
Yeah.
that presents unique challenges. And well, I know your firm. Your firm it represents plaintiffs in class actions across the world and does good work. And we all have a shared interest in making sure that people who work downtown feel safe. So I hope we have a chance to follow up with you and talk about some solutions.
Yeah, we would appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Next item, please.
Item 345, request of B. Max Grad to address council regarding fire service water line price increases.
Good morning.
Hi, how are you?
I'll take those. I'll take those.
So the paper I provided was copies, but my name's Max Grad, and about 10 years ago, I rented a building on sort of a wing and a prayer. I often joke, I wouldn't rent to me. And it's the former Vocational Village building long ago out in Selwood across from the Oaks Bottom Wildlife Refuge, and it came with some extra utilities. And so what I have in front of you is my e-bill for a 480 service I don't use. And every 3 months I get a bill, and started at $50 and now it's $69. Not too bad. About 38% increase over 10 years. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
For what again?
For a 480 service that I don't use. My point is, it's an extra service. No electricity goes through. Volts, 480 volts. Mm-hmm. And the other one is for my sprinkler service. And the sprinkler service began at $55 a month. No water ever goes through it. And over the course of 10 years, it's more than doubled. And so I'm here to say that either you could make it better or you can make it worse. And by that I mean, how many buildings in this city have sprinkler services and are already paying $50 a month to the city? You are looking for a street fee. And so you could actually charge the buildings that don't have fire lines for the fact that they don't have fire lines, but then give buildings like mine a break.
So just, I don't, the materials in my packet Pardon me? Sorry. The materials in my packet don't include your bill. Did you give us the bills?
There should be a table that says Water Bureau.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
And so I just want to make sure we're tracking something. The PGE bill, we have nothing to do with. But
Right,
have
my
you-
point is, it's a line that I don't use, but that their change in price
Right.
over 10 years, $19.
So who bills you for the sprinkler?
Portland Water Bureau.
Water, not fire. It's the water.
Right.
And
It's a
there's no water. There's no water going through the pipes.
Right.
And the fire bureau has certified that it's not an active sprinkler.
No, it's an active sprinkler. My point is, water never flows through it. I've never had a fire. So here we have a service that the Water Bureau charges you for every month just to have it in case you need it.
Right.
And the price went from $150 every 3 months to $352 every
see.
3 months. It's huge.
I see. And the service is not. That's the fee unrelated to whether the water flows.
Exactly. I didn't
Okay.
flow any water. You know, if I did, I'd get charged for that.
And so you're asking us to review the charge to see
Right.
whether it's appropriate.
And what I'm suggesting is that you could leave it, but then say, hey, everybody who doesn't have a fire service, you are costing us risk. That's going to be our street fee. You don't have a fire sprinkler service, so we're going to charge you. Buildings that do, here's a break.
So, Mayor, I'm not personally familiar with this issue. The question of the fee that you're charged for the service, that's of great interest to me. Both what do you get for it, and then how has it gone from X to Y?
Yeah.
So the Bureau will investigate that, and then I'll talk to you. In terms of your broader idea, I would be interested in knowing more about what your vision for that, and is that in writing?
No, just putting it to you to suggest how many buildings already have a sprinkler service, and where is the $50 a month? So, you know, at this point, it's $120 a month. If there are 1,000 buildings, right, then they're taking in $120,000 every month for water that doesn't flow. So is the Water Bureau essentially slush funding their operating costs on the back of, you know, every new construction has to have one? So now you're signing up for, at this point, I can't do the math, you know, $1,200 a year that gets taken by the city for doing the right thing with your construction.
Right.
So, you know,
It's an issue that the commissioner in charge will take a look at, and thank you
Good.
for
Yeah,
your
thanks.
time and
Okay,
bringing it
good.
forward.
All right, thanks so much.
Thank you. It's my understanding that Donna Hayes is here. If you'd like to come up and
No, I have a date for May 24th at 10:05.
very good. Okay, thank you. Appreciate
I
your
think
being
we've
here.
changed it to the afternoon, if that's okay with you, so that there's more space available.
No, it's not okay, sir.
That doesn't work?
For that, for 2 o'clock, for the May 24th?
Yeah.
Okay, I can do that.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Then we'll set aside a good amount of time. Anybody who wants to testify can do so. Thank you, Mrs. Hayes.
And Commissioner Fritz, I understand you helped to arrange for the time certain, which we appreciate on behalf of the council.
Very good.
Commissioner Fritz, since you made sure that we have the time certain, will you just let for the record?
We do. The time certain is 2 o'clock on May 24th, and it'll be posted later today, I believe.
Okay, for
Thank-
Donna Hayes to.
That's right. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, very good. I believe we are close enough to the time certain for item 347.
.347 proclaim April 2017 to be Fair Housing Month in Portland.
Portland is in a rental housing crisis. However, this crisis has always been present for people of low income and communities of color, recent immigrants and refugees, people with limited English populations, people with disabilities, and other protected classes due to Portland's long history of rental housing discrimination. The historic patterns of racial segregation and disinvestment by investors and lenders still predict housing quality, health, income, and access to services and community amenities. Urban renewal and our prioritization of livable, walkable neighborhoods have increased Portland's housing demand, and as this rental market tightens, households should not be fearful of losing their home, or so fearful of losing their home that they accept harassment or substandard housing conditions. We want housing that stabilizes families and the community as a whole. Despite fair housing laws that are currently in place, we've all heard of recent incidents of harassment on the basis of religion, race, and ethnicity. So this is a very real and very current issue in our community. This proclamation demonstrates our belief that hate has no place in housing or in our city. We know the most effective way to stabilize households and prevent homelessness is to keep people in the housing that they already have. I'm working with the Portland Housing Bureau and community stakeholders and all of my colleagues on the Portland City Council to alleviate this rental crisis for everyone and defend everyone's civil rights. We're committed to finding solutions that focus on education of all landlords and renters, fairer standards for the contract between renters and landlords, enforcement of fair housing law, not only at the time of seeking housing, but also after a renter has secured their housing. There's a cost to everyone when families are displaced. It puts stress on our schools, our healthcare system, transportation system, the quality of housing, and every other public institution in our community. The increased social and economic costs of displacement are not compensated for by rising rents. So, we must start by breaking down the barriers for housing choice for our most vulnerable populations in Portland. By starting with these communities, we can create long-term solutions that ultimately will work for everyone. We will use this Fair Housing Proclamation to guide us in the coming year around policymaking around sound rental housing stabilization. So without further ado, I'm excited now to read Portland's Fair Housing Month proclamation. And it's in microtype, so bear with me here. Whereas our community is committed to equal opportunity in housing for all, and whereas this year immigrants, refugees, people of color, and religious minority community members are facing unacceptable harassment and discrimination that impede their housing and civil rights. And whereas low-income community members are increasingly more likely to experience substandard housing and community conditions due to economic displacement. And whereas, under federal fair housing law, it is illegal for a landlord or a real estate agent to treat anyone differently because of immigration status, national origin, race, color, religion, sex, disability, or familiar status. And whereas, in addition to federal fair housing laws, Oregon civil rights statutes, and Portland City Code state it is unlawful to discriminate on the basis of marital status, sexual orientation, source of income, including housing assistance, military status, gender identity, or history of violence, stalking, or sexual assault. And whereas the theme of Portland's Fair Housing Month is Hate Has No Place in Housing, and the Fair Housing Council of Oregon's annual poster contest is It's Fun Having All Kinds of Neighbors. And whereas the City of Portland and its partners are working together to stop hate in housing by educating all members of the community about how harassment is a violation of fair housing rights, how discrimination harms communities, and how housing choice for everyone benefits the whole city. And whereas the Portland Housing Bureau is working with policymakers, renters, and landlords to increase housing choice citywide and prevent displacement of low-income renters, and whereas 2017 marks the 49th anniversary of the signing of Title VIII of the Federal Civil Rights Act, that's the Federal Fair Housing Act of 1968 and the 29th anniversary of the Fair Housing Act amendments of 1988. And now, therefore, I, Ted Wheeler, Mayor of the City of Portland, the City of Roses, do hereby proclaim April 2017 to be Fair Housing Month in Portland and encourage all residents to observe this month by joining the effort to promote fair housing for all.
Stop the sweeps.
Please, no disruptions. If you disrupt the meeting again, you'll be asked to leave. And with that, we have Andrea and the panel. Good morning. Director Krieger, good morning.
Good morning, Mayor Wheeler. I'm Kim McCarty from the Portland Housing Bureau, and I coordinate the Bureau's fair housing contracts, the city's federal entitlement grant, and our Fair Housing Advocacy Committee. So here today, we have representatives from the Fair Housing Advocacy Committee that represent the City of Portland, the City of Gresham, and Multnomah County. And in recognition of Fair Housing Month, we'll hear remarks from our Housing Bureau Director, Kurt Kreger, and namely our committee members, Jason Tremblay, who's the committee chair and represents the Coalition of Communities of Color. Patricia Rojas may be joining us, and she is the executive director of El Programa Hispano Católica, and she represents the City of Gresham on our committee. And then Alan Lazo, the executive director of the Fair Housing Council of Oregon, who's also a member of the committee and serves as a technical advisor.
Good morning, Mayor Wheeler and Commissioners. I'm the chair of the Fair Housing Advocacy Committee and also a member of the Coalition of Communities of Color. Our committee, comprised of representatives from the City of Portland, Gresham, Multnomah County, and housing and community organizations, is charged with updating the analysis of impediments to fair housing and providing guidance on the Fair Housing Action Plan. The analysis outlines the issues the city must address to bring fair housing choice to everyone. Both the analysis and the Fair Housing Action Plan are federal requirements for cities in order to access federal entitlement grants. The analysis helps us plan investments that build equitable communities and meet the intent of Title VIII of the Federal Civil Rights Act, the Federal Fair Housing Act of 1968, and the Fair Housing Act amendments of 1988. While many facts about housing discrimination remain unchanged in spite of local and national efforts and investments, this analysis shows that we need to give extra attention to the issues of unlawful harassment that results in barriers to both housing choice and fear of exercising fair housing rights. Given this, we present this year's theme for Fair Housing Month, Hate Has No Place in Housing, and the national theme, Fair Housing Equals Opportunity. Equal access to housing is a fundamental promise of America, said Brian Green, who is HUD's Acting Assistant Secretary for Fair Housing and Equal Opportunity. When access to housing is unfairly limited, it, in turn, limits access to good-paying jobs, quality schools, and economic opportunity. The Fair Housing Advocacy Committee is focusing on how harassment is a barrier to housing access and retention. While housing harassment is not new, the stories our partners are telling us lead us to believe that the issue is more pronounced in recent months in our region due to anti-immigration sentiments. These sentiments, mixed with negative stereotypes, create a dangerous environment for many Portlanders, a context which my colleague Patricia Rojas will expand on later in her remarks if she's able to attend. We must remind ourselves that it is illegal to treat people differently because of their race, ethnicity, national origin, religion, family status, or sexual orientation. It is the obligation of public institutions to affirmatively protect citizens from housing discrimination and policies or acts that would present a barrier to housing choice because of one's protected class status. Harassment impacts citizens in different ways, but result in a resident's inability to fully enjoy their home and access opportunity. Renters may change where they park their car or restrict where they enter or leave their homes. Harassment may come from neighbors through offensive flyers or vandalism, taunts, or even calls to police, child protection, or immigration officials. or it may come from the landlord in the form of withholding repairs or making eviction threats. Alan Lazo, the Executive Director of the Fair Housing Council of Oregon, will share his observations on the types of harassments and housing that exist in our region. When faced with harassment, individuals respond differently. Some retreat, leave, or may feel confined. Some seek to help from the property manager, but only to learn that management refuses to intervene or believes that they should not intervene. Others reach out to the police for help, only to find themselves as the subject of a police reaction. Often the harassment leads to a threat of eviction, and when this reaction is disproportionately directed to people who are a member of a protected class or because they are in a protected class, this illegal harassment also becomes a civil rights violation. When harassment is not addressed, particularly in this housing environment, there's a cost to the community. An eviction could easily make a low-income household homeless or displaced from their community. If, for example, you are a large family or disabled, the time to be rehoused is much greater and the cost on the city is much greater. A recent statement from HUD notes that 12% of complaints filed allege familial status discrimination. HUD explains that this discrimination is, quote, often a proxy for race discrimination. In addition to loss of housing, this type of discrimination has a destabilizing effect that prevents families from positioning themselves in ways that enable the next generation to take advantage of all this country has to offer, end quote. Finding affordable housing for families is essential for younger generations to access opportunity, as seen with the efforts to keep families in their apartments in both the Roosevelt and Rigler-Cully school communities earlier this year. Also, as the leader in Portland Public Schools leading the commission to redraw school boundaries because of both enrollment shifts due to growth and gentrification, we need a regional effort to plan for change that is both equitable and sustainable. Knowing this, there are policies we can pursue to resolve these issues. One, Portland can institute a landlord registration in order to consistently train all landlords in tenant-landlord rights and responsibilities, including responsibilities to intervene when residents report harassment. Two, Portland can create a mandatory rental inspection program to ensure our families do not delay asking for needed repairs because harassment has created a fear of eviction or rental increase. Three, Portland can invest in organizations that work with people of color, immigrants and refugees, religious, and survivors to educate people about their right not to endure harassment. Four, Portland can significantly increase enforcement tools to expand access to housing choice for families of all sizes as well as individuals. And five, Portland can reinvest in media education campaigns to help people identify different kinds of housing discrimination, including subtle acts of discrimination or disparate impacts, and how to address it. These are just some of the ideas that could address our housing crisis, and Bureau Director Kurt Krieger will soon share his frame for affirmatively furthering fair housing in our area. Thank you very much for dedicating this month Fair Housing Month and for allowing me to speak before you this morning. I'll now turn to my colleague Patricia Rojas, Executive Director of El Programa Hispano Catolico, for her remarks.
Thank you, Jason. Good morning. Sorry I was late. And thank you, as Jason just mentioned, for making this Fair Housing Month. I would like to speak with you about the impacts of our housing policies on communities of color, as well as immigrant communities. And when I mention this, it's much more than just our local environment. It is also the national decisions that are being made, policy decisions that are going to have local impact here on an already difficult housing market and in a community that's already afraid. So it is very important that we take a look at the evidence that we have, that we do know that there are discriminatory behaviors and practices that we're seeing amongst landlords. And though everybody is impacted by the current housing market, communities of color, and especially immigrant communities who do not speak English, who are not familiar with the system, are significantly and disproportionately impacted by our housing market as well as policies. So today I'm here to ask you to create policies that create an inclusive Portland. Having an inclusive Portland that's welcoming of all is much more than a statement. It's much more than an ethical and moral decision. It is a policy decision that we have to create policies that enable communities of color not only to come to Portland, but to stay in Portland. As a part of the East Portland Action Plan, and you might be familiar with this group, we did a listening session and we came up with recommendations for fair housing a couple of years ago. And what we heard from immigrant communities and refugee communities is that they don't have anywhere to go. They, in their situation where they're coming with a family of 5, a family of 6, a family of 7. There is no housing in Portland that they're able to access. And that situation has gotten worse since then, 2 years ago. And we now know that because of the heightened, and we just have to call it out for what it is, racist practices and language that is coming out from this administration, people are afraid. And we're seeing that in our community where, as Jason said, unless we have a regulatory body that can oversee the practices of landlords, we can't expect them to not demand Social Security cards. We can't expect people to just out of their own will not expect to see driver's licenses. So I ask you to consider what kind of practices and policies we can put in place to create an inclusive Portland that will allow all of us to be able to stay and grow in this city. So I thank you today. I want you to please consider that we're in a moment in time where we can make a decision. And as the representatives of our community, we ask you to make the right decision, to create policies that are going to be able to not only allow families like mine stay in Portland. I live in the Cully neighborhood, and it's really sad to see that there's not many of us left in the Latino community there. And we have to understand and take responsibility for our part in this issue, and it's not accidental. It is intentional. It is partially the policies that we have put in place and the practices historically. So we have the opportunity and responsibility to recognize that and correct it for generations to come. So thank you for listening today, and I appreciate you making this month Fair Housing Month.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Well said. Thank you.
Mayor, members of council, Kurt Krieger, Housing Bureau Director, and it's my pleasure to be here with Jason, Patricia, and Kim. I wanted to talk a little bit about how far we've come in 49 years, but also how far we have yet to go. You would think after nearly 50 years of fair housing education enforcement, our society would be more inclusive, accepting, and equitable. But in fact, things have just gotten more subtle. As Patricia mentioned, we have a climate at the federal level which is challenging settled law. And I think it's important that you know that Senator Lee from Utah, Representative Gosar from Arizona have each sponsored Senate and House legislation that would prevent the use of federal funds to study, evaluate disparate impacts created by fair housing. What is disparate impact? I think it's important that you know the background to this. There was a Texas case against the State Department of Housing and Community Affairs, which found that the state policy was concentrating poverty in a way that created a disparate impact on people of color, limiting their access to opportunity. And the U.S. Supreme Court found that an impact of a policy, if it has a disparate impact, is just as impactful as if it is intentional. They did not ascribe intention to the state of Texas, but they found that the outcome was just the same. So a lot of what the Housing Bureau does, and Jason mentioned the analysis to impediments to fair housing, is we look rather deeply at disparate impact, and we evaluate those effects, and we use federal money for that purpose. So clearly it's an attempt to try to stifle local efforts to create a more inclusive Portland. And while those bills have been proffered, they haven't yet been heard. They may show up in budget bills or as amendments to budget bills, so we need to be vigilant. I think it's just an illustration of how far we really have to go after some 50 years of progress. My purpose today is really to introduce Alan Lazo. Many of you know Alan. He was mentioned, I think, last week as an appointee to the General Bond Oversight Committee. I would like to say that all the members of the GO Bond Oversight Committee's bios and pictures are cached on the PHB website, so you can learn more about Alan's impressive career on our website. But he is the Executive Director of the Fair Housing Council of Oregon. He participates throughout the region and has served on Portland's Human Rights Commission for the last 5 years. He served a year as commission chairman and has been very vocal on the issues of fair housing. And I think it's worth mentioning that yesterday we had a 4-hour bus tour. You know, the Beatles had that Magical Mystery Tour. This was kind of like the Magical Misery Tour of chronicling fair housing abuses from recent history, where skinheads beat to death people of color in Southeast Portland, to more profoundly important but historic events such as the Vanport flood, where people of color were essentially proscribed to live in a floodplain, which reasonable people would have known was a dangerous place to put them, and many people died. So that's an effort to raise people's awareness that in our everyday lives, decisions are made, and they are sometimes an inflection point. A decision made to put public housing in a floodplain was made by responsible people that should have known better. And each and every day, we have moments of inflection. Decisions can be made to put housing in high opportunity areas to make sure that we're compensating for people's lack of access. It does mean that it costs more, and we're oftentimes criticized for the high cost of affordable housing, but we're trying to alleviate and correct some of these pervasive disparate impacts. So with that, I've introduced Alan Lazo, and he has some really good news for you.
Young students? Right. No fair use of kids and Come on up right in here, I think. Just inside here. I'm going to introduce all of you in a second here.
Good morning. Thanks for being here.
And Nina, come on up with me. Not gonna. Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. Thank you for having us this morning, and thank you for your proclamation around Fair Housing Month. My role this morning really is to introduce these young artists. I will circle back to what Jason said and talk a little bit about what the other speakers had talked about in this environment of hate that we have that frankly doesn't show up in the artwork of these young students, the future of what we believe fair housing can be. It does belie what we see in the environment today, an environment at the federal level and throughout our country that is filled with hate. And we know that when that environment exists, that it can manifest itself in discrimination. In preparing for my remarks this morning, I did look through our records for calls that we've received in the city of Portland since the beginning of the year. I didn't see any specific incidents related to hate and harassment. But at the Fair Housing Council, we have had those calls come in since the beginning of the year. Director Krieger talked about the subtler forms of racism that are happening in housing discrimination now that the Fair Housing Act is almost 50 years old. But what I saw at the turn of the beginning of the year was that seemed to be out the window. I have two examples for you. We had one caller from within the metro area that called. It was a Latino couple who called and said that when they went to rent an apartment from a private landlord, that they were told that the apartment was available. When they went, they showed up and spoke with the landlord, and the landlord identified that that person was of Latino descent. He told them that he was not going to rent to them because they were Mexican, and that he was afraid that Mexicans would beat him up. We had another incident, again, within the metro area, but not right here in Portland, where people are being told that they cannot rent an apartment without proving that they are legal U.S. citizens. So that's the environment that we're in today. It certainly is starting to translate into these incidents of discrimination. Again, I looked in our records and I haven't seen any calls specifically in the city of Portland. But we do believe they're out there, and there certainly is some concern that the current market conditions we're experiencing now might have a chilling effect on people being able to report incidents of discrimination. So again, that certainly does belie one of the great joys that we have as the Fair Housing Council of Oregon every year in our poster contest when these the brightly colored artwork of young students from around the state appear in our office. And this morning here, we've got the students who received the grand prize and the age group winning posters from our poster contest. So I'm going to read their bios for you this morning and have you hold up, and I'm going to give you a certificate and an award for those winners this morning. So our grand prize winner, which is on the poster that is printed and distributed in thousands of copies throughout the state of Oregon, are Hannah Dursa and Sophia Jordan from Dunaway Elementary. And they actually collaborated on their poster this morning. So Hannah's 11 years old. You could hold it up. Do you want to hold that up and show the folks behind you? So Hannah's 11 years old, and she's in the 5th grade at Dunaway Elementary School. Besides drawing, she has many interests like math, writing, and softball. When she grows up, she would like to be a mathematician, an author, and even a scientist. So Sophia is 10 years old, and she's in the 5th grade at Dunaway. She's very involved with school and has a wide range of interests, including reading, writing, and softball. When she grows up, she'd also like to be an author, an artist, or possibly a graphic designer, which is well reflected in your art. So thank you, Hannah and Sophia. We asked them, the young artists, our theme, which is intended really to attract young people to fair housing. Through this collaborative approach, we asked Hannah and Sophia what they believe this year's theme, it's fun to have all kinds of neighbors, means to them. And they said, you can have fun no matter what your neighbors look like. Having diversity all around creates a better opportunity to make new friends and to learn about different cultures, traditions. All of the diverse people we drew were to explain everyone is welcome in our neighborhood. So thank you, Hannah and Sophia. So in the grades 1 through 3, our first prize winner was Rachel Clay. Rachel right here from Chief Joseph Elementary. So Rachel is, and she was here last year at City Council too. So Rachel is 9 years old, the 3rd grade at Chief Joseph Elementary. Besides drawing and art, she also loves reading, writing, and creating gifts for her friends. She has an older brother, William, 2 cats, and 3 fish. Oh, I remember that from last year, actually. Due to her love of animals and fashion, she'd like to be a veterinarian or a fashion designer. Maybe even design clothing for cats and dogs. That's a very Portland thing to do, isn't it? Thank you so much, Rachel. And for our grades 4th and 5th first prize winners is Ava Gruen. She's also from Dunaway Elementary School. Ava's 10 years old. So Ava, is Ava here? Oh, Ava, okay, so if you want to show us your poster. And Ava's 10 years old in the 5th grade at Dunaway. She enjoys creative writing, drawing, and listening to music. She's a true advocate who is interested in starting a house for abandoned dogs with special needs. Ava believes this year's theme around it's fun having all kinds of neighbors means a world with people from different races, gender, sexual orientation, and ethnicity being friendly neighbors to one another. So thank you so much, Ava. And in our grades 6 through 8, our first prize winner was Alara Lane. She's from Catlin Gable School. So Alara is 12 years old. She's in the 6th grade at Catlin Gable and is an artist who's been taking numerous art classes since the 3rd grade. When Alara isn't honing her art skills, she enjoys rock climbing and enters rock climbing competitions every year. Impressive. Beyond developing her personal skills, she also enjoys donating her time and her efforts to good causes here in Portland. So thank you so much, and welcome to all of our contacts.
So, Ellen, I'm hoping we can get some photos.
Yeah, we
up
have some
front.
photos.
So
Before you
and
do,
then
could I
some
just,
posters
I
for
want
you
to say something.
Oh,
Yes.
sorry.
This is the 9th time that I've had the honor of hearing this presentation. I believe it's the first time that the grand prize winners have collaborated on a poster. So that's really an important thing, particularly at this time, that we work together to get good things done. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you all.
So we're going to do some photos and have the posters.
So you can, just stay up here. And we have some posters, some gifts for all the commissioners. And then we're going to ask, come on over here.
We're all getting a sign. We're all getting a sign. City Hall.
We need one of the kids in front of Amanda. Come on. Shift on over. There we go.
And if I could just ask, thank you. We had the other posters here. If you could just take a moment, maybe we'll bring them to you. The posters. If you don't mind. Yeah.
Thank you. Congratulations. Oh, there-
So I also want to thank all of the family members and teachers who helped these young artists to participate in the competition. It really is that family work.
Congratulations. Oh, and there's a letter for you there. From me and Alara. Thank you. And Sophia. And Rachel, that one is for you. Thank you all so much.
I think this guy next to me is an asshole.
Great. Commissioner,
Yes, that's perfect.
Commissioner Fish, did you have a comment?
Yeah, just So, Mayor, first of all, thank you for bringing this proclamation forward, and thanks to the young people who joined us today and the artists. And if you come back to City Hall in a couple of days, you'll see that in each council office, your art is on display, and we're very proud of what you've done. Mayor, we had some testimony today reminding us that the Fair Housing Act arose quite a long time ago in the 1960s, and it was actually signed into law by Lyndon Johnson. But the interesting thing we also learned was that the biggest area of discrimination right now, or one of the biggest areas, is discrimination against families. And in fact, the Fair Housing Act did not address families, and we did not get teeth into the law until 1988. And that's important because that was signed into law by George Bush, Bush 41. So to those who say that there's a partisan aspect of fair housing, we're reminded that it was launched by President Johnson, a Democrat, and it was strengthened by President Bush, a Republican. Now, please.
Folks, again, any disruptions, and you will be asked to leave.
Teresa, please. So let's reflect for a moment on the confirmation hearings, of HUD Secretary Carson. The question of fair housing came up, and the director of the Housing Bureaus noted that there's a dispute about whether the law should cover disparate treatment. Mr. Carson, in his testimony, referred to the whole concept of affirmatively furthering fair housing as social engineering, which had gone too far. So this secretary of HUD has called into question our nation's commitment to enforcing fair housing laws. And as with environmental laws and many other laws in this country, it is now clear that the primary role for enforcement is going to devolve to states and cities, that we cannot count on a robust federal partner to enforce these laws. Now that brings us to Mayor Wheeler's State of the City address. In his speech, which was cut short because of, I guess, a timing snafu, the mayor pledged to increase funding for fair housing testing. It was one of the most important parts of his speech, but because of the timing of the City Club, he did not get to deliver that. So, Mayor, you will be the first mayor who has made that commitment to increase funding for fair housing testing and who has elevated the role of fair housing enforcement in the Housing Bureau, and I congratulate you. And as we heard, it could not come at a better time. But I also want to observe that something else one of our testifiers said, I believe it was the director, was that when we build in areas of high opportunity, we are furthering fair housing. And I want to just underline that, Director Krieger. You sort of, you said in passing that we are sometimes criticized for building in areas of high opportunity. And what that means, we're investing in people's opportunity and families to succeed. And that when people tell us we should save $1 by going against opportunity, or by paying construction workers less than a prevailing wage, or by not putting our environmental standards into our housing, remember that the question should always be at what cost? At what cost are we backing off our values? And I think we should be proud that we are building quality affordable housing in high opportunity areas and making it available to low-income families. And finally, I just want to call out the work of the Fair Housing Advisory Committee and the Fair Housing Council of Oregon. This has been a difficult path for us starting in 2011. And when we launched testing for the first time, we were criticized by friends and foes alike, and in most instances, they didn't know what they were talking about. But what we know is that the Fair Housing Council of Oregon is our partner in enforcing the law. And what we also know is that without robust testing and disclosure of those test results, we are allowing landlords to believe that they can take advantage of the law with impunity. So again, I come back to our mayor. I appreciate that in his State of the City address, he chose to highlight his personal conviction, his personal support for enhancing our fair housing testing. And that will be, of course, done with our partners, the Fair Housing Council of Oregon. That data should be published, and to the extent landlords are violating the law, that should be published, and people should be shamed for what they're doing, because it has no place in our community. So, Mayor, thank you. Thank you for bringing this forward.
Very good. Commissioner Fritz, did you have anything else on this? Very good. So why don't we go back to time certain 346.
Reappoint James Young to the Citizen Review Committee Advisory Board to the Independent Police Review, a division of the City Auditor's Office.
Good morning. Thank you for your patience.
My name is Anika Bent-Albert. I'm the Assistant Director for the Independent Police Review Board.
Rachel Mortimer, Assistant Program Manager at the Independent Police Review.
Could you check to make sure that the green lights?
They're
on.
both
Yes.
Outreach Coordinator for the Independent Police Review.
We are here before you all this morning to seek the reappointment of James Young to the Citizens Review Committee, the CRC. The CRC is a voluntary...
Okay, this is your warning. Do not do that again. All right? This is a disruption. It is in violation of the council policies. Thank you. Appreciate it. Sorry.
It's okay. The CRC is a voluntary advisory board to the Independent Police Review. CRC members are responsible for gathering community concerns about police services, developing policy recommendations to address patterns of problems with police services, conducting, reviewing, and advising IPR on the complaint handling process, and hearing appeals from community members and officers regarding the recommended findings of completed administrative investigations. The reappointment of Mr. Young will fill a vacancy of the committee that stems from the expiration of Mr. Young's prior term, which was 3 years, which would bring the total number of members to 11 as directed by City Code. Mr. Young is here today, and we are very grateful of his continued interest in serving on the CRC.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Questions? Or? Okay.
Thank you. Any
Sure.
public testimony on this matter?
Yes, we have 6 people signed up. The first 3 are Mimi German, Cameron Stark, and I believe it's BJ.
And Mr. Young, if you'd like, I'll give you the final word at the end. Good morning.
Oh, we don't have a third? I thought there was a third.
Lightning with Lightning Super Watchdog.
You wanna go first?
Good morning.
It's not a good morning when we have people on the Independent Police Review Board who only love the cops. It doesn't get us very far when we need justice. This is a poem that I wrote for my testimony for this. I grow the names of the dead. Beside the river's southern banks, on these northwest fertile grasses, I've planted years of harvest grown, rooting time while yielding passings. Here the rounded turnips grow beside the yellow parsnips, and there the wild onions spread, no rows for which to catch them. Rise, lettuces and kale and chard, beets so red and gold, asparagus and radishes breathed into life, oh, to soiled earth. By the side of the house, stands of daffodils, iris and lilies rise. For I grow the names of the dead as young black lives are yanked like weeds from their mother's sides. I plant these names like a burial beneath storm clouds breaching hurriedly the swollen spine of dawn's vertebral sky. I oppose this man's this man being on the IPR. I oppose everybody on the IPR right now. I think that we need people who are trustworthy. And if what you said, Mayor, in your State of the City address was true, that you were truly wanting, and I was hoping that you do, and still do, wanting trust between the black community and the police, we have at least 11 cops right now who are on notice for racism. Somebody's got to get fired. This guy cannot come on to do this work to support our community when we're in need from being targeted, from being killed, from kids being killed, from having a corrupt grand jury system here that allows cops to walk free. We can't have racist people on the IPR investigating racist cops. Right. We might as well get Jeff Sessions here. That's it.
My name is Cameron Stark, and I'm a resident of North Portland. I oppose Mr. Young being reappointed to the CRC because we have not found accountability through the CRC. It seems to have been a failed process over and over again. I'm not sure that it even is the people that are on there. I kind of feel like the CRC is set up to not work, that system does not provide accountability. I think it goes beyond reappointing some of these people, but I don't believe that you should reappoint somebody when they were found to not prove accountability. As far as I know, he claims that he didn't know about the claims about Mark Kruger, the Nazi cop. And you would think, being on the Citizens Review Committee, you would be educated on the history of the bureau that you're overseeing, I would say. I just don't think that system provides accountability and that it works. I think that it needs to be redone. I understand that it was part of the Department of Justice settlement that you have the CRC, but I don't feel like that it's actually working. I think that you could find better members to be on the CRC other than people who work with prosecutors and even sometimes people that are from other states. Because as far as I'm concerned, I think he was from Michigan or something like that. And if we had somebody that was homegrown in our community, a grassroots advocate on that board, it would provide a better chance at accountability instead of somebody who had been working with law enforcement for so long. Once again, I oppose Mr. Young's reappointment to the CRC. Thank you for your time.
Good morning. My name is Lightning. I represent Lightning Super Watchdog. On this situation here, as you know, we have a bio here. And last week, for whatever reason, you did not want to have a bio on the Affordable Housing Bond Committee. Again, your statement of going to the internet to pull up a name, well, I did that. There were 15 names that I pulled up at that time.
Today, we've linked them all and the contracts
Well,
per
like
your
I've
request.
stated to you, per open meetings law, the information that we're provided at these meetings must have enough information for us to make a reasonable decision to vote yes or no. That is an open meetings law that you need to follow and understand. We need the proper information. Now, pertaining to this individual, again, I went to another meeting on behalf of Mr. Davis. He was positioning himself on a retaliation claim against the police. They basically pushed to the side and didn't even reference that retaliation claim. It was inappropriate for CRC to do that. And another issue I have is that when we're talking on these cases on having camera phones picking up the video, why have you not put body cams on Portland police officers? Why don't you put those on them so we have more information, more data to look at, to have a clear understanding on what happens out there in the claims that they're making that we basically don't believe. And we need to have those body cams on every Portland police officer, every patrol officer at Multnomah County, and there's no reason that you can't push that forward now. Other cities are. I'm currently reviewing 50 different policies from 50.
So this isn't about body cameras.
Oh, yes, it is, because
I'll be
that
happy to answer your question.
that
but stick your
information
testimony
pertains to
this.
the CRC meetings on having adequate information to make a reasonable decision that you, for whatever reason, do not want to have body cams on Portland Police. What is the reason, Mayor Wheeler?
I will give you the reason. There will be body cams for Portland Police, but I have not yet adopted my first budget as mayor. And as I've said many times, we will pursue that program, but it has to be budgeted first. There's currently no allocation.
It was put into the budget at
There was,
$850,000.
excuse me, you're mistaken.
And federal
Continue.
grants were not applied for, and I'm not mistaken, and I can pull that data up. So you have not.
Well, I
proceeded
have been
forward.
mayor for what, 13 weeks.
That is correct.
And you should wait and see what my budget and my priorities look like. Thank
Fine.
Those body cams, the policy behind them.
Yes.
Next three, please.
The next three are Dan Handelman, David Elton, and Joe Walsh. And that's all who signed up.
Good morning.
How are you? I think this microphone is on. Okay. My name is Dan Handelman. I'm with the group Portland Cop Watch, and I just want to start this morning by looking at the resolution, which says that there are 3 vacancies on the CRC, which isn't true. It seems like this was copied and pasted from the last round of appointees. It gives me a sense that things are in a little bit of disarray at IPR these days. To that point, though, the IPR could have appointed more members to the CRC. The stakeholder group that met last fall at the behest of City Council recommended expanding CRC's membership to 13 members, or 15 members rather. And that was ignored. It's not in the item that you're hearing tomorrow afternoon at 2 o'clock, and I know we're going to talk more about that then. But part of the issue is that the CRC members are currently strained to their limits because they're hearing 1 to 2 cases per month, although that backlog seems to have cleared out somewhat. However, we still at Cop Watch feel the best solution would be to create legislation allowing civilian members of the Police Review Board to rotate into the CRC on an as-needed basis. Their training is mostly the same, and council learned when you heard the Taser case in February that it's possible to learn the difference between the reasonable person standard and the preponderance of evidence standard, which are differ between the PRB and the CRC. CRC members currently have to learn the differences between those standards when they sit on Police Review Board panels on shootings and death cases. Another solution would be change CRC standard reviews so it's not deferential or confusing. And since council has final say, CRC's votes are only recommendations anyway. But we'll talk more about the ordinance tomorrow. Related to the CRC's concern there aren't enough members to attend 5-person panels reviewing appeals, it's crucial that CRC members at least show up to as many meetings as possible. The reappointment of Mr. Young to CRC is objectionable, not for the reason you've heard from other people to us, but because he's made some valuable contribution to CRC. He advocated for a less deferential standard of review. He's advocated that CRC should hear deadly force appeals, which we completely support. He's also made statements we disagree with. But these are not personal concerns we have. We checked the CRC minutes in our records and found that of 15 CRC meetings held from May 6, 2016 to April 2017, Mr. Young only attended 5. CRC has a protocol that states it's the responsibility of each CRC member to attend all scheduled meetings. Excusals may be granted for occasional schedule conflicts. We suggest that missing 10 or 15 meetings falls outside the occasional conflicts contemplated by the protocol. We ask that Mr. Young not be renewed. And you should ask the auditor to present one of the alternates for appointment. He can still participate in work groups, and you should be clear up front with people who are being appointed that they may be attending 2 or more meetings a month so that they know how much time they have to invest in this so they're not disappearing. 2 other quick points. I may have raised this issue before. There's no closed captioning, no projection here, so when it's hard to hear, I don't know what people who are hard of hearing do or deaf. And finally, this was a 9:45 a.m. time certain, and you the 10 a.m. time certain, and it's just, for those of us who came down here knowing this has been on the schedule for several weeks, it's very frustrating to have you move the schedule around like that. Thank you.
Thank you. And I do apologize for the schedule shift, and we made a decision just based on the fact we had a bunch of kids who needed to get to school. So I do appreciate your patience. Morning.
Morning, David Elton. I grew up in Lake Oswego. I've spent most of my life in Washington, D.C., Spain, and Spokane, Washington. But I moved home about 5-6 years ago and lived mostly on the beach. In Spokane, Washington, I've worked with the sheriff there, Ozzie Knezovich, a friend, a person I knew of. He wasn't really a close friend, was killed by police. His name's Otto Zehm, Z-E-H-M. You can look that up on Wikipedia. It's kind of an interesting case. A police officer, it took us many years to put him in jail, but he did go to jail for 4 years. I am generally pro-police, although I'm active on investigating police, lawyers, judges, and CEOs, and occasionally the GCA, conservators and guardians. So I try to be objective. I know you've been mayor for 13 weeks, and I very much support you. I met Henderson just an hour ago. Our family is looking to help with this and homelessness issues. We're very active in this. Although I live in Lake Oswego, I'm going back to school at the age of 51. Our family is looking at a partnership with a number of mostly lawyers and Mormons, Catholics, and people of the Jewish faith, which are generally my clients. It tends to be wealthy Mormons. We're going to plunk down some money on my father died 10 months ago, and we're going to get together some people that will plunk down a good faith deposit on June 3rd, which my dad died on June 3rd. He was one of the co-founders and original investors in Holiday Retirement Corporation. And I worked for Dad and Bill Colson for a number of years during college. There are people in Lake Oswego and surrounding areas around Portland that want to help you solve this problem. And so what I'm offering to you, and this can fall under homelessness and police oversight. I generally support the reappointment. Even though I've known Dan a couple of years, my issues have largely been in Spokane. But there are people that want to help you solve 2 issues, homelessness and police oversight is so important because that's something I'm very passionate about. But I hope that we can meet with you sometime in the next few weeks. And I've talked with Maurice about this. I support the reappointment of this gentleman. I think he's done a lot of good. He should be attending more meetings. But I hope that we have time to meet. There are people outside of Portland that have hundreds of millions of dollars. Like my mom is 77. She's not going to live forever, although she'll probably live to 95. We want to help you. So I hope that you have time for coffee. We look forward to help. I do support the reappointment of this gentleman. I think he does good. I think you ought to consider someone like myself or this gentleman or someone from outside the normal community of police and retired police officers. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Good morning.
Good morning. For the record, my name is Joe Walsh. I'm sorry. One of the things that really bothers me about this is his not showing up for the meetings. That bothers me. It seems that if you only show up for 1/3 of the meetings, my math is right, then you shouldn't serve. By the way, where are the other 2 commissioners? If they don't show up, they shouldn't serve either. You know, we take our time and we go through some hassles of getting here. It's important to us. I know, Mayor, you think there's a small group of thugs. I don't think we are thugs. I've never been called a thug in my whole life. I've been called mouthy. I've been called Irish. I've been called a jerk. And that's okay. Thugs is a little bit too much. The CRC does not work. We all know that. But you keep reappointing people to the committee that doesn't work. They can only recommend. You know, you need an organization that says, that cop did something really bad, he's out of here. I don't care what you call it. You can call it Ted Wheeler's group. I don't care what you call it. I want them independent. I want them funded independently. I don't want you guys to touch it. I want them to come before you as equals, with their own funding, with their own investigation. So we trust them. We don't trust the CRC. They just recommend, and then it's overturned, or it's pushed aside, or it's postponed, and then you wonder why we get so angry. If you want to stop your interruptions, respond to us in real terms. Say, no, we're not going to reassign anybody. We're not going to, just continue this craziness, because that's what it is. We all know the cliche. If you keep doing it, and you get the same results, and you keep doing it, that's insanity. We know that cliche, all of us. Anybody with a 4th grade education knows that. Why do you keep doing it? That's the thing that I don't understand. Why does it serve you to do it? What does it give you? It gives you nothing. It gives you our anger. And you can have all the cops in every room in this building. You're not going to stop us from interrupting your services unless you respond to us. And this is not the way to do it. You're going to rubber stamp this damn thing again, and we're going to leave here angry.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh.
And I ran out of oxygen, so I got to go over there.
That's all who signed up.
Very good. Any further council discussion on this matter, or do we want to have Mr. Young?
I'd like to have Mr. Young. I'd also like to just clarify about the point that Dan Handelman brought up about the number of vacancies that we have. If staff could address that, please.
Mr. Young, why don't you come forward as well?
So, we also just noticed that listed 3 vacancies, and we apologize that should have listed 1. This was the only vacancy at this time. It is, and perhaps just, there we go. So this is indeed the only vacancy at this time. So we need to correct that for the record. I can also just answer that our office and the auditor did have a robust discussion about the attendance issue. The numbers are not quite correct as given by Mr. Handelman. I think for 2016 there were 17 meetings, and Mr. Young missed 7 of those meetings. He did during that same time attend all of his work group meetings, and was very, very engaged in policy work and additional work that was going on during the days and not during those official meetings. That was a discussion we had with Mr. Young. I should say also, he was in very, very close communication with our office for each of those missed meetings, and we were very aware of the circumstances that were going on with his life there. The auditor very much feels that his contribution is valuable to the committee, and wants to keep having that contribution from Mr. Young.
Let me ask a question, and I don't know Mr. Young, so please, this is not in any way intended to impugn you or any of your colleagues. But our meeting, we have heard this criticism that it is hard to get the quorum together, that it's hard to schedule so many people when they're so busy. Are meetings available by phone?
It would be logistically difficult, but it would be something that we could consider.
So here is the only condition under which I will give a yes vote. I will assume that you are as valuable to the committee work as the auditor says. Again, I don't have a strong sense, but I trust the auditor, and I will trust that. But I want a commitment that you will find a way for people to participate in those committee meetings by phone, so that, number one, it doesn't drag these conversations out endlessly, and number two, it allows a quorum to get together on a regular basis. And we'll just have to find you a meeting that has a multi-phone, a meeting room that has that. I know there's plenty throughout the city infrastructure that provide that kind of an opportunity. So I'd like a commitment that if it is available by phone, that you will make an effort to attend more of the meetings. Because I do think it's important for consistency purpose that people attend. And we need to make it, our job as city employees is to make it as easy and convenient as possible so that people can do that. So do I have that commitment?
Yes, we'll have to check and make sure that that would work for voting purposes and that there's no code restrictions against that for sure, but absolutely.
Are you aware of any code restrictions about meetings being conducted by telephone? I mean, we do this with the city council from time to time.
Mayor and council, it is allowed under the code. It is allowed. It would be the same rules.
Well, so Mayor, as I understand it, if there for some reason needs to be a change or modification or clarification in the code, the condition which you're establishing, I think, would require the auditor to come to the council with that change if necessary. Otherwise, we can assume the code would allow it.
To look at it this afternoon when we're looking at other IPR changes. May I just suggest that we ask Mr. Young, give him a turn to say why he hasn't been attending and why you're willing to serve now.
And I'd also like to hear why you are attending, why you want to be on this committee.
Thank you. Two answers. First, the data regarding the attendance has really just been in the past year, not my entire term. Sure, and also it doesn't include all the time commitments. To the extent there's been any committee related to police oversight, whether it was under COAB, set up by the city attorney's office, or use of force, part of CRC, I've attended those. As a former city attorney, I've been asked to serve of counsel with a city attorney in some very complex rate litigation in my former state of Michigan. Unfortunately, that city council and many court hearings take place during the first week of the month. And as a result, during the past year, because of travel, I just haven't been there. To the extent that I've been able...
You can ask me to leave. You
Okay.
can ask me to leave. This whole team here is making up their own rules. They don't get to make up the rules. This is a warning.
To the extent that even before I would leave, I would check with IPR to make sure that to the extent they had next meeting, they had a quorum set up. And if I might, the suggestion regarding participation by phone is excellent. Because number one, it could resolve my issue to the extent...
Excuse me, please leave, thank you.
To the extent that if I'm required to travel. But we also have had CRC members, because years ago you looked for diversity in all sorts of areas. And having people with families, for example, little children, has made it difficult sometimes for members to attend. And participation by phone would really assist. The key, of course, is prepping beforehand, but then to the extent that you can't attend the meeting itself, it would provide, I think, excellent flexibility if attendance by phone was permitted. That's number one. And number two, I'm willing to, I initially got involved because as fate had it years ago, I met a former mayor and I didn't realize she was mayor, and I told her my background and she gave me some things that she thought I should do as I neared retirement. And CRC along with CASA were two of the items. As I've gotten involved, as I've seen the process, and I agree with a lot of the comments, I'm telling you, the current system of police oversight does not work, okay? It is not fair to citizens, it is not fair to the police. Attendance by police is, they simply do not attend for a variety of reasons. So I'm committed as a matter of trying to make where I've lived for 10 years and my new home, do something meaningful. And being committed to meaningful police oversight is now on my bucket list. And just as the other gentleman was sitting here, I would be happy to meet, whether it's with Nicole or you or anybody else, to do what can be done.
Thank you.
So
I
that's
appreciate
why
that.
I'm willing to.
Thank you. That's a good answer. Thank you, Commissioner Fish.
Mr. Young, I'll tell you why I'm going to support your reappointment with the proviso that we allow people to participate by phone, and with the condition that your attendance be consistent with what is expected. After the council heard the CRC appeal recently, which was the first CRC appeal that's occurred during my service, you and I had a conversation because you took the time to come and be in the audience. And I appreciated your perspective on that issue. There were a number of irregularities that arose in Mr. Klug's appeal. The 2.5 years it took to get to us. The fact that the wrong directives were presented to the CRC and had to be withdrawn and then updated. The fact that on a number of occasions people did not show up for meetings and therefore had to be rescheduled. In addition, for me, I had, as you know, concerns about the 6 tasers and the use of force. What I gleaned from our conversation, however, is that you share the concerns that the council expressed that day in overturning the recommendation of the chief, that the system is not working the way it should. And so in reappointing you, I would ask you to also share with us on an ongoing basis your recommendations for how we can improve this process. I know we're going to hear from Mr. Handelman and others who have views. I do believe you have superb leadership at the CRC now. I think the current chair is outstanding, and in fact, her presentation at that hearing was one of the reasons I voted not to sustain the chief's recommendation. But I think there are improvements that need to be made, and we don't want to wear people out. And to take 2.5 years to deal with that one case cannot become the norm. So I appreciate your willingness to serve, and I would ask you to help us get it right.
I do that. I agree with everything you've just said. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Yes, you got me there. It's teamwork. I move an amendment to the third whereas that will now say, whereas the committee has 1 vacancy resulting from the completion of James Young's term, and then the fourth whereas substituting 1 applicant instead of 3 applicants at the end of that sentence. And thank you, Mr. Handelman, for pointing that out.
It's a motion, seconded. Any further discussion? Call the roll on the amendment.
Fish.
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. Back to any further questions. So I'm just going to say one thing. I'm actually sort of sorry Mr. Walsh isn't here to hear me say this. I'm relatively new to this process, and a few weeks into my administration, I had the opportunity, I'll call it that, to participate in one of the hearings. I was largely left with more questions than answers. I have come to be very frustrated with the accountability process generally, and this is not a condemnation of anybody individual. I think collectively there's some acknowledgement these things are taking too long. They are ploddingly slow. And I am only now seeing things cross my desk that were started in some cases over 2 years ago. And you know, that's problematic. On the other hand, there are some things that finally cross my desk and I go, why the heck was there ever an investigation? And why did it take us this long to get to this point? So I am putting my flag in the air on the side of the oversight process isn't working the way we need it to work. And you know, I applaud you for wanting to serve on this committee. I will take you at your word. You've said a lot of important things here on the record for all of us to hear. But I actually don't think the problem is just appointments to a committee. I think it's much, much deeper than that. And it's going to take a lot of work to have the accountability system that both the public supports, that does justice. We're having a conversation tomorrow, which will be, I think, the beginning of a longer conversation around the accountability systems and mechanisms we have in place, and we need to continue to push it. Because Mr. Walsh was, I believe, actually correct. He said one of the reasons that people are angry is that there is a lack of confidence in the system itself, and I agree with him on that. But thank you for your willingness to serve. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you
I wish
all.
you the best of luck. Please call the roll.
Fish.
Aye.
Fritz.
Well, thank you for this important discussion, Mayor. I agree with you. One of the things that was most helpful to me in that appeal hearing we had last month, or several weeks ago, was actually seeing the timeline of how things happen internally. And then I know that the Citizens Review Committee has been chastised for not getting things done in 180 days, but often the matter doesn't even get to you in that time frame, and certainly not in the time frame that would allow you to make the decisions with the appeal. So that is true. I agree with the Mayor that the oversight system is not working. I think we would all like it to be better, and so we should have a robust discussion tomorrow about what does that look like and who holds the independent police review accountable when things still don't seem to be taken care of in a timely manner. I do thank you and all of the members of the Citizen Review Committee, particularly popular, including one particular instance where you were suffered an assault by a community member, and I appreciate you being willing to serve after that. But that's why I'm voting to support you. I don't expect people to agree on these extremely challenging things, and I want a robust debate. So thank you very much for providing that, and also for giving us the assurance that you will be able to attend in person more this year, as well as by phone if necessary. Aye.
Wheeler.
So, as I said, I will support this with all of the provisos that I put forward earlier. But I gotta say, it's, as sort of the new kid on the block, it is frustrating for me to come in after having heard for 12 weeks about how hard it is to get people together for these meetings and how slow the process is, and to only learn now that we're still not using a telephone for people to be able to call in to I mean, that's just like meeting basics 101. And I guess my frustration is just how many other of these impediments do we have laying out there that could be solved with a really simple common sense solution. So I blame myself for that. I don't think we are giving people enough of an opportunity to just say, here's like 10 things you could do to make things easier, more convenient, less expensive, and ultimately more effective in this city. So I'm putting out the call on this. I want you guys to think hard and innovate and work with the auditor, who I think is a great innovative leader, and see if we can improve this process. And I know we'll have the opportunity to talk about this again tomorrow. Thank you. The appointment's approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item, please.
Did you want to go to the regular or the pooled items?
Oh, let's do the pooled items.
Item 350, accept a grant in the amount of $1 million from Oregon Department of Transportation for the Regional Signal System Concept of Operations and Implementation.
Mayor, this was simply pulled so we could vote on it because we didn't have the requisite votes in the consent agenda.
Very good, and this is is this a first reading, is my understanding. So we'll move, is there any further question? Sorry?
Is there any testimony?
Oh, I'm sorry, is there any public testimony on this particular item?
I was not going to do anything today.
Excuse me.
Excuse
me. You are.
But you're asshole.
You're going to have to leave. You're going.
Get away from
Mr. Walsh, you're going to have to leave.
assholes out there. I ain't leaving.
Mr. Walsh, you have to leave. Please leave. All right, folks, I'm sorry. We're going to take a recess and clear the chamber. If you would like to come back in a few minutes, I would ask you to go out to room C, which is just to the left, and we'll reconvene in a few minutes.
Asshole out there trying to arrest me.
there was no testimony on 350, so that is a non-emergency first reading. It moves to the second. Why don't we move to 351 and take care of that, and then go back to the consent agenda when Commissioner Fritz is back in the room?
Commissioner Fritz will not be returning. She was out till 2.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so, 350. So, 350.
351.
351, amend marijuana business regulations definition of wholesaler and use of temporary gentrification of occupancy.
Commissioner Udaly.
Well, these are some small code changes, our first steps towards resolving some of the issues with our city marijuana regulation, and I don't think anyone's here to speak, or do we need that?
It's not required.
Okay.
Is there any public testimony on this item?
I did not have a sign-up sheet. We are on 351. Someone else.
Would anybody like to testify on marijuana code?
What? The what? Yes.
Amend the marijuana business regulations definition. Come on up. Okay, well then, there will be other opportunities you don't have to testify right away on there's other ones. Very good. Please call this is a non-emergency first reading. It moves to second reading. Back to the regular agenda, assuming we have Susan Anderson. Is she back in the room yet? Very good. Thank you. 352. If you want to go ahead and read it.
353?
We're on 352.
Oh, all right. Lost it. Sorry. (352) Reappoint Jeff Bachrock, Michelle Rudd, Catherine Schultz, Chris Smith, and Mike Hauk to the Planning and Sustainability Commission for terms to expire May 31, 2021, and extend the terms for Gary Oxman and Margaret Talmadge to expire on May 31, 2017.
Good morning.
Good morning. And this is an item that was on consent that was pulled off with the request that we provide biographical information, resume for the appointees, and we've done that and have made it available online. 5 of the commissioners are being appointed for a 4-year term. 2 are being extended to the end of May so that we can complete the work on the comprehensive plan, Central City Plan.
Very good. Any further questions? Any public testimony on this item? 352.
I had 4 people sign up.
Very good.
Mimi's gone. Cameron Stark, Lightning Super Watchdog, and David Elton.
Apparently they are not here. Please. Oh, I'm sorry. Come on up. Thank you. No worries.
No, we're on the.
Not yet, You're next. Oh, okay.
Is there any further? Are the individuals here?
Pardon? Yeah, I don't think you're. Cameron Stark, Lightning Super Watchdog, and David Elton.
All right, it's a non-emergency first reading. It moves to second reading. Next item, please.
This is an appointment.
I'm sorry, it's a report. I apologize. Please call, we have a motion.
I second it.
Please call the roll.
Fish.
The folks who serve on this body put a lot of time and energy.
Is your mic on?
Sorry. The people who we're reappointing put a lot of time and energy into their service on the Planning and Sustainability Commission Board, and they help us make good decisions, and we're grateful for their service. Aye.
Udaly.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye, the report's accepted. Next item, please.
Item 353, authorize city attorney to join as a party in litigation challenging president's executive order on sanctuary cities.
So before we begin this, the city attorney has asked us to take up a substitute. Could I get a motion? Well, why don't you read the substitute language and
I
we'll
actually
take a
don't
motion.
have the substitute in front of me. I believe it was filed as a substitute.
Oh, this is the substitute language?
Yeah, we'll be
Very-
happy to tell you
Very
what it
good.
does.
Then we don't need to reread it. Can I get a motion and a second on the
So
substitute?
moved.
Commissioner Daly, can I get a second on the substitute?
Second.
Call the roll.
Fish.
Aye.
Udaly.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye, so now we're discussing the substitute. Good
Great.
morning.
And just to clarify, the reason for the substitute was that there may be one procedural mechanism or another by which we either join or bring our own lawsuit on this matter, and it was just to clarify that we had authority to do it either way if you authorize us to proceed. So what we're asking is for the authority to file a lawsuit against the federal government and President Trump and Attorney General Sessions and the Director of the Department of Homeland Security, either joining in the lawsuit that Seattle has already filed or filing our own lawsuit and then moving to join the lawsuits. We're in the process of sorting it out. I've been in communication with Pete Holmes, who is the Seattle City Attorney. He very much supports, as do their officials, the city joining in their efforts. This lawsuit pertains to the President's Executive Order 13768, which threatens all so-called sanctuary jurisdictions with withdrawal of all federal grant funding if they refuse to participate in the enforcement of federal immigration law. The lawsuit is based on a number of factors, but primarily asserts that there is a misinterpretation of 8 U.S.C. Section 1373, which is the only applicable federal statute and with which both we and Seattle comply. The President's executive order, in addition to requiring compliance with that statute, appears to more affirmatively require that we partner with ICE in enforcing federal immigration law. We believe that's both not required by the federal statute at issue and, more importantly, would violate constitutional principles of states' rights, local jurisdictions' rights. It would be an overreach by the federal government. In addition, even if we were not compliant with 8 U.S.C. Section 1373, which we believe we are fully compliant, it would not be a basis to withhold all federal funding, which is what the administration is threatening to do. And as I mentioned, we've been in close contact with Seattle. We work well with them, and they welcome this step and authorizing our participation. We also have very fortunately received a generous offer of pro bono representation by a major West Coast law firm. I'm waiting until conflicts are cleared before we announce that they will actually be representing us. They have some work to do to clear that up, but they don't anticipate any difficulty. So our office will do a lot of the substantive work, but they will also work with us, and they will act as our counsel in Seattle so that we will not incur additional expense to hire outside experts. And with me is Chief Deputy City Attorney Harry Auerbach, and we're available to answer any questions you may have about this.
I'd like to start with a basic question. I'm teeing you up for this with a little bit of an introduction. I first raised this possibility of joining with Seattle because I was advised that if we sue independently the way Seattle has done, the way Los Angeles has done, we will be using exactly the same legal framework to do so. And so my thinking was, by partnering with Seattle, we send a strong message as a unified Northwest. And in addition to that, there was the possibility of teaming up our legal efforts, which I believe can only make us stronger in this endeavor. But I'd like to get your perspectives on this as well, going it together versus filing an independent lawsuit.
So we believe that there is a mechanism for it purely has to do with some procedural requirements, and we believe, and we're in discussions with the Seattle City Attorney, where we believe there is a way forward for us to join the lawsuit as a matter of right. We simply want to cover our bases, and if for some reason it would be more advantageous procedurally to file our own lawsuit in Seattle and then move to join them, we wanted counsel to have given us broad enough authority to do that. But we agree with you that we think that Seattle's complaint is very well thought out. We have the same bases, legal bases, to sue the federal government that Seattle does, and our hope is that it will work out for us to join them as a plaintiff in their lawsuit, which would involve them filing and us with them filing an amended complaint in that action. And that is what we anticipate as the preferred course of action. There are some things that could occur that, might necessitate us filing our own action. Were, for example, a response to be filed prior to the time that the amended complaint is prepared, which we don't anticipate, then we might have to file a motion for leave. But anyway, it's a lot of, it's just to make sure, we filed the amended resolution merely to make sure that were it to be necessary, the council authorization was broad enough to authorize us to file ourselves and move to join should that become procedurally necessary.
Yeah, the only thing I'd add is that the law is a little bit like medicine in that there's a lot of differential diagnosis that goes along. And so an issue has been raised about technically whether we can sue in Washington or join Seattle's lawsuit. Having reviewed that, I don't think it's an impediment, and our expectation is we will be joining Seattle's lawsuit. But in case it turns out that that won't work, we just want to have an avenue to go forward.
Right, and just to doubly underscore, so what we are authorizing you to do through this resolution, the substitute, is to go either path. Obviously, our preferred path is joint, but if necessary, we'll go forward independently as well.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Tracy, I have a couple of questions and comments. First, I'm pleased that you brought this to council, but just to be clear, if this issue comes up during a time when the mayor doesn't have the chance to come to council and it involves whether we join with an existing lawsuit, I believe the council has said the mayor has the authority to make that call. Is that correct?
So what we previously asked council to do was to give the mayor authority to authorize the city attorney to join with any other jurisdictions on related issues as an amicus. In this case, we're seeking authorization to actually file as a plaintiff.
Okay, appreciate that. And the mayor made a very important point earlier and raised an important point about the value of us joining an existing lawsuit versus filing our own. And the one thing I didn't hear you say, which I think is just worth noting, we all understand that these issues are going to be decided ultimately at the circuit court level, if not the Supreme Court level, and the Seattle and Portland are in the same circuit, the Ninth Circuit. So it will ultimately be decided by the same appellate court whether we initiate or whether they initiate. So that's another reason why it makes sense to partner, as I understand it.
Absolutely. And even if we file an independent lawsuit, our intention would be to file it in the Western District of Washington so that we could move to join the lawsuit. So either way, our intention is to present a united front with Seattle, and potentially, my understanding is, speaking with Pete Holmes, that there are a number of other jurisdictions that may also be looking to participate as plaintiffs.
And finally, we're getting I think all of us are getting emails from people that seem to be as confused as the general public generally is about this issue, partly because of conflicting statements made by different actors. And some of it emanates from the Trump administration, where they've said things that, as far as I can tell, are flat out and that's not true. And others, just people reading in. So I think it's very important, just because we need to speak with one voice, and you're our attorney. Number one, your view is that we are currently not in violation of federal law, correct?
Correct.
Number two, since we all took an oath of office and we swore to uphold the state constitution, Oregon law very clearly says we cannot use public resources to enforce federal immigration laws, correct?
Correct.
Number three, we do have the benefit of a Supreme Court case on a related issue, which arose under the Affordable Care Act, when the federal government, under threat of withholding Medicaid dollars, sought to compel states to expand Medicaid. And a Supreme Court headed by Justice Roberts, the current Chief Justice, said that violated the 10th Amendment and Article 1 of the Constitution because it would coerce a state to do something which they otherwise wouldn't do or didn't want to do. And so we do have the benefit here, even if someone says we did violate federal law, which we don't believe we did, even if there is deemed a conflict, even if the Ninth Circuit view, it doesn't hold, we do have the benefit here of a Supreme Court case issued by a conservative court and this current Chief Justice that upholds the idea that we can't be coerced to do something, and that would be our best line of defense if we ever got there.
Correct, that would be a spendings clause violation, and that's what the Sebelius case holds.
And then finally, and I only know this because you gave us this excellent memo, the final point is, to the extent that the president has said that we would forfeit all federal money, that is also would violate both statutory and constitutional principles, because the court very narrowly the court narrowly defines what you can actually condition, so as not to cross that line into coercion and unlawful conduct under the Constitution. So as I understand it, if we were wrong on everything, which we don't think we are, and under the worst case scenario, we may be putting at risk a couple of those grants that we get from the federal government to augment the police work we do and the like, and those are actually a tiny fraction of our overall budget.
That's correct, and also interestingly, Commissioner Fish, the administration has at the same time indicated that the law enforcement grants are the ones that they don't want to pull, even though technically those are the ones with the closest nexus to the conduct. So I think even those, we would have good arguments.
Thank you.
Very good. Commissioner Daly.
I just have a quick question. It'd be interesting to me and maybe to some of the members of the public. Just what is the benefit for the city and for the lawsuit of us joining as a party rather than as an amicus?
So what the difference is that we ourselves would actually be suing as a plaintiff, the president, the administration, the other members of the administration that I had mentioned, and saying that Portland has legal interests itself that it is seeking to protect through the lawsuit. So we're not just saying as a municipal jurisdiction, we're generally interested in the resolution of these legal issues, but we're saying that we ourselves have federal funding at stake, that we ourselves comply with the state law, and that the actions the Trump administration is taking negatively impact the legal interests of the city of Portland, and we would have a judge ruling on that issue. Whereas as an amicus, a judge would not be ruling on any issue particular to the city of Portland. We're just there as a friend of the court. We're not a party who's affected by the outcome.
Thank you. I'm sorry, we have some disturbance in the hallway, and I'm not sure what that is, but it looks like there's plenty of people out there to address whatever it is. Do we have any public testimony on this island?
We've Cameron Stark, Lightning Super Watchdog, and David Elton.
Are any of those individuals here?
Mr. Stark's here.
Mr. Stark, thank you.
I'm sorry, I'm having a really hard time. That's my godmother out there screaming. Since this pertains to the, my name's Cameron Stark, for the record, by the way. While we're talking about the ordinance of a sanctuary city, I can't agree that this is a sanctuary city. I do agree with your actions of filing the lawsuit in conjoince with Seattle. I believe that it shows strong representation and solidarity. I do think that you should move forward with this lawsuit. But in a sanctuary city, I think that you and Seattle should work together to... there's a lot of crime. There's a lot of drugs. There's a lot of gangs. There's a lot of problems in Portland and Seattle as well. We're losing a lot of lives. We're losing a lot of lives of black people. We're losing a lot of lives of children, of family members, of community members. Those things shouldn't happen in a sanctuary city as commonly as they do. As you know, yesterday there was a shooting at a park by Lloyd Center. Turns out the person that died was a Don't Shoot Portland activist. Our whole community's shaken. The whole city of Portland. I mean, just from the top to the bottom. It's nonstop. The violence, the police killing people, Quanice Hayes, James Chassie. I mean, it's ridiculous. If this is sanctuary, this needs to be safe. And we need to be safe from not only each other, from the police. Safety is all around. Sanctuary is all around. You know, people have to come here and feel safe. I just don't feel that it's a sanctuary city when you come into Portland from who knows where, Europe, and it's a Wednesday afternoon and there's riot cops running around. I mean, that just doesn't send a message of safety. I do agree with the lawsuit, though. And I just want to be safe. I just want to feel safe. I want our community to feel safe. And it's really hard when we're losing people we love on the daily. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Was there anybody else signed up?
That's all who signed up.
This is a non-emergency first reading. It moves to second reading.
This is a resolution.
I'm sorry. I apologize. It is a resolution. It says that in plain English on my sheet. I apologize. Commissioner Daly.
Oh, do you want a roll call?
Did you have a question? Oh, I'm sorry. Very good. Can I get a motion, please?
I move.
I'm sorry. It's a resolution. Just a roll call. Carla,
Okay.
please call the roll.
Fish.
Mayor, thank you for bringing this forward. City Attorney, thank you for the work you've done to educate the council and the public about these issues. And I was proud when the city unambiguously reaffirmed our commitment as a sanctuary city. And I'm honored that we are joining with sister cities along the West Coast to resist what I consider to be both an unconstitutional and an un-American executive order. So thank you. Aye.
Udaley.
Aye.
Wheeler.
So I have been asked many times, what does it mean that we are a sanctuary city? And we just heard, I thought, some very provocative testimony on that question. And I'm with those who say that it's important, and it was important, to articulate what a sanctuary city is and what a sanctuary city is not. But I think it's even more important that we back those words with concrete action. And I'll be honest with you, 5 years ago, I never would have envisioned myself suing a president of the United States on an issue of what I believe is an issue of morality. And yet here we are. And I think it is very important that we're taking this action. I think it's important that we're doing it jointly with other large urban areas on the West Coast and around the United States. And I have every confidence that we will prevail in this action. So I'm very proud of my colleagues and the legal team and everybody else who's engaged in this process, and we'll push forward. So with that, the resolution is adopted. Aye. Next item, please.
Item 354, accept
Thanks,
bid
Tracy.
of Stellar J Corporation for the Safeway Pump Station Upgrade Project for $1,148,683.
Good morning.
Almost afternoon.
Almost. Another Wednesday.
Good morning, Mayor and members of the council. I'm Larry Palat from Procurement Services. You have before you the procurement report recommending a contract award to Stellar J Corporation for the Safeway Pump Station upgrade for $1,148,683. The engineer's estimate on this project was $1,090,000. Oh, okay. Can I move just, there we go. I have to hold this stuff back far enough so I can see it. The engineer's estimate of this project was $1,090,000. And the Bureau's confidence level was high. On January 4th, 2017, Council approved ordinance number 188188 for procurement services to competitively solicit the Safeway Pump Station upgrade. The project was advertised in the city's electronic procurement system, and bids were reopened on February 14th, 2017. 6 bids were received in response to the solicitation, and Stellar J Corporation is the lowest responsive and responsible bidder at $1,148,683, which is 5.38% over the engineer's estimate. The Bureau of Environmental Services, along with procurement services, identified an aspirational goal for the certified DMW ESP subcontractors and supplier utilization of 20% of the hard construction costs. There is a total of $53,132, or 4.6% of certified firm participation on this project, including certified subcontractors apportioned as follows: a DBE, $21,275 doing trucking, fencing, and traffic control.
Can I get that on a percentage basis?
I don't have it. That would be roughly 2.3%. I'm doing fast math, Mayor, I'm sorry. I don't have those specifically broken out. The total is 4.6. The WBE at $4,340 would be less than 1%, and an ESB providing plumbing services at $27,517 would be just over 50% of the total subcontracting. Stellar J Corporation is located in Woodland, Washington, is not a state-certified DMW or ESB contractor. They do have a current City of Portland business tax registration and are in full compliance with the city's contracting requirements. If the council has any questions regarding the bidding process, I can answer those. I believe Dan Hebert from BES is here. The vendor was here and had to leave for a separate meeting. So,
No doubt. Thank you. Any further questions?
Yeah, I have a
Commissioner
couple
Fish?
of questions, Mayor. You know, the 4.6% participation against a 20% aspiration is paltry, to say the least. And in addition, it's not an Oregon company, and it's not a state certified in terms of MWESB. So, what did we learn from this procurement that we can apply to a future procurement to get better numbers?
if BES wants to come up, that's great. What happens is in the procurement, the bidding process, all of the forms are out. They're required to submit, to contact and submit information relative to the contacts of all of the certified firms that they've been in touch with, relative to the various and assorted pieces of available subcontracting. Stellar J is a very large corporation and has capacity to self-perform many things. Not that that's any, doesn't, I mean, there's a lot, we do business with a lot of really big firms, but that's been the issue here, is they are self-performing, and the certified firms that they contacted either on their form either did not respond or had a bid that was too high for them to use.
Hi.
I'm Dan Hebert. I'm with BES. I'm the project manager for the project, and it's difficult to say what might have happened in the procurement process. I can tell you that when we put together the contract documents and the specification, we identify a number of divisions of work, specific divisions of work that the bidders are then required, as Mr. Collette was saying, to contact minor MWESB firms and get, like, what, five quotes?
Yeah.
A minimum, document that they've tried to get quotes from a minimum of 5 people, or 5 firms. And we try to identify as many divisions of work that would be applicable to smaller firms, like fencing, plumbing, grading, traffic control, structural concrete. There's about 30 different divisions on one sheet of paper that we could check off, and we try to make sure we identify as many as we possibly can.
Well, let me ask something, because really, and I'm not saying this to be critical, but the DBE opportunities here are less than perfunctory. $6,000 for fencing, $6,000 for traffic control. So this is not about engaging underrepresented contractors and people in business. It's not even window dressing, because it's so paltry, and it's spread up in ways that are going to be utterly meaningless. So what is the track record of Stellar J? I guess it's called the Stellar J. What? I object to referring to them as the Stellar Corporation, but what is the track record of the Stellar J Corporation in achieving the goals that we have mandated for these kinds of contracts?
You know, I can tell you that we have not maintained those kind of records, so I don't know.
So one thing I'm going to
They're
suggest
not very good.
that we, pardon me?
They're not very good.
Well, so that's one thing I'm going to suggest, Mayor, we start doing, because if, particularly where there is a modest difference between first, second, and third, and there's, here I think the difference is what is it? First and second is 7%, and then 2.4%.
Right.
And we do have alternative contracting approaches that the council has authorized in certain situations. The concern I have about this one is I don't know that the pump station work per se constitutes the kind of specialized work like maybe, you know, Willamette River Crossing, where we just know going in that there's only a handful of people who do it. It's highly specialized work, and it's unlikely we're going to get the numbers we want. But if we see consistency with a particular company of not meeting our goals, then I think we have to know that, because then we have to have a trigger to say, well, what do we have to do differently? And one of the things we can do differently is obviously sitting down with the company and saying, what barriers are you facing? And we don't want to hear that you sent out 5 notices and got no responses. That let's make sure you're mailing to the right places, you're engaging people. At the Housing Bureau and PDC, they actually do open houses with subcontractors and others to make sure that people are aware of things. So that's number one. And number two, at some point, I would want to know when we'd want to rethink the kind of contracting we're doing on these projects, that we need to go a different route if we're not getting the numbers. But when we're down to close to 4.6% and it's divided up in ways that are almost meaningless for the companies that are going to get them, I feel like we failed. And I'm not putting that on you, but I don't feel like I have the mechanism here to understand whether the company is consistently falling short, whether how we're doing the contracting is a culprit, or if there's something else we need to do. And the mayor has been very clear. He wants to see better numbers. So I don't think, because I know that our pump stations need upgrading, and our pump stations are very sensitive, and we can't afford to have them fail, so I get that. And I'm not going to stand on ceremony here, but what I will ask you to do is report back to us on the record of Stellar J Corporation. And also, I would like a written report on what have we learned from this particular project that can inform how we look at future procurement. Because we're spending a lot of ratepayer dollars now in upgrading our infrastructure, and I applaud that. But we're also seeing a number of contracts that really don't meet even the minimal standard the council has set. And I want to make sure that it isn't because we haven't gone the extra mile to address that problem.
Well said.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Quick question, sir. Sure. Would you like that report sent directly to you?
To me and my colleagues.
I'd like to see it as well. Why don't you just send it to the whole council, please?
Great. We'll do. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good.
And by the way, if you believe there's some structural problem, or if you believe they have consistently fallen short of the mark, let us know that, so we have the information to then engage you on some problem solving.
We have the background information, sir, to deliver that report and the follow-up information.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Is there any public testimony on this item?
No one signed up.
I move the procurement report.
We have a motion.
You second it?
We have a second. Any further questions for the panel? Call the roll.
Fish.
Appreciate the discussion, and thank you for getting back to us with follow-up information.
Absolutely.
And thank you both for the work you do. We do a lot of procurement, and I know that your heart's in the right place.
Thank you.
Udaly.
Aye.
Wheeler.
I second everything Commissioner Fish said. These numbers are way too low, and I want to underscore the second point that he made, which is the nature of the work that is being done by MWESB firms. It's very, very low to non-skill work that doesn't actually build any capacity of minority or women-owned contractors, and doesn't do much by way of vocational training. I mean, setting up a fence is setting up a fence. And so it always sort of galls me when I hear contractors come and they say, and we ask, well, what are the actual skill sets that you have engaged women-owned and minority-owned contractors to do? And I'll just tell you, I wince when I hear flagging and truck driving. Although those pay great in the short term, I also want to hear people who are actually involved in trades. I want to hear people who are involved in technical skills development. I want to hear them make a commitment. And I'm feeling a little guilty because they were here and they could have answered these questions in their own words, and unfortunately they weren't able to stay.
Right.
And maybe they had a very good answer, and we have to give them the benefit of the doubt. But 2%, or even if it's 3%, frankly, even if it's 10%, it's too low. And I want to work with and develop the capacity of master contractors who are really committed to building up skill set and equity in human resources over the long term. And I'm not convinced this does it, but with all of the stipulations Commissioner Fish put on the table, I will support this contract, but I'd like to get that information as well.
Absolutely, sir.
Thank you. So with that, the report is accepted.
Great. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you for your hard work. Next item, please.
355,
Never mind, that's an emergency, so we'll have to skip it.
357, second reading.
Yep.
357, extend term of franchise granted to MCI Communications Services, Inc. to build and operate telecommunications facilities within city streets.
Any further council discussion? Call the roll.
Fish.
Aye.
Udaly.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye, the ordinance is adopted. Next item, please.
358, authorize a contract with Cornforth Consultants, Inc. in the amount of $139,776 for the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission Part 12 Dam Safety Report for Portland Hydropower Project 1 and Project 2.
Other than loving the name, is there any further council discussion on this item? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Fish.
I just want to note for my two newest colleagues that the first time David Schaff got up and made a presentation on a related subject, and he said, I want to talk about the dam safety report or the Dam 2 project. We stopped him and cautioned him about using that kind of language at a council meeting. But of course, it is the dam safety report that has to do with a dam in the.
Just move on, Commissioner.
In the Bull Run watershed. Aye.
Udaly.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye, the contract is approved. Next item, please.
Item 359, approve an agreement with Christopher D. Duffin and Elizabeth C. Staver in the amount of $75,975 to construct sidewalk improvements to the north side of Southeast Henderson Street from 300 feet east of Southeast 78th Avenue to 545 feet west of Southeast 82nd Avenue.
Any further council discussion on this item? Call the roll, please.
Fish.
Aye.
Udaly.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye, the agreement is approved, and just so people know, these are second readings, so we've already had public testimony and presentations on all of these. Next item, please.
Item 360, authorize the Bureau of Transportation to acquire certain permanent and temporary rights necessary for construction of the Northeast 47th Avenue Phase 1 LID project through the exercise of the city's eminent domain authority.
Any further council discussion on this item? Please call the roll.
Sorry. Fish.
Aye.
Udaly.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye, the acquisition is approved. Next item, please.
361, authorize purchase order with Pierce Manufacturing, Inc. for the purchase of 3 emergency response apparatus for a total not to exceed amount of $2 million.
Good morning. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
And are the green lights on the mic?
Yes, they are.
Great, thank you.
So, good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioner. I'm Jay Guo, Senior Business Operation Manager for Portland Fire and Rescue.
I'm Deputy Chief Marco Bernini. I'm the Logistics Chief for Portland Fire and Rescue.
Very good. Thank you.
So these apparatus, it's just an ongoing replacement project that we have for replacing aging apparatus for our Portland Fire and Rescue stations and fleet in general. And this was just 3 more new apparatus. One of them is a foam unit that's kind of desperately needed for the region for hopefully helping with the back and crude type oil train situation that we've been struggling with over the years around the country. This will give us a apparatus in the central area above the rail yards, Station 24 North Interstate and Lombard. It'll carry about 1,200 gallons of foam, being able to respond to any of the oil tank farms or any incidents up and down the rail systems that we have, or any other foam required response that we'll have. The other one is a replacement for heavy squad, heavy rescue downtown in our main fire station. That apparatus is about 15 years old now. We keep those frontline for 15 years, and then they go to reserve for 5. So it's on schedule to be replaced. And the third apparatus is a brand new fire engine. So that's just one more of many that we need to replace over time. So if there's any questions.
Very good. Any questions? I just had one question. What's the disposition program for used apparatus?
Used apparatus, I have a whole list of needy organizations, mainly volunteer and other fire departments around the state and our region that have requests in for any aging or apparatus that we want to surplus. So this list is long. We have about, I think right now I have 15 departments. Most of them are small that we usually, when we decommission our apparatus, we'll offer them to those departments, and 99% of the time they accept them. And so we go through the process and do the paperwork, and then just provide those apparatus to those fire departments mostly around the state of Oregon.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions?
I thought we gave some of these apparatus to Guadalajara.
We have, yeah. We've given several to the Bomberos in Guadalajara, Mexico.
Thank you.
So.
Thank you. Is there any public testimony on this item?
Nobody signed up.
Very good, then, unless there's any further discussion, this moves to second reading. It's a non-emergency first reading. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Next item, please.
Item 362, assess property for sidewalk repair for the Portland Bureau of Transportation.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I am Sherry with the Auditor's Office. Sherry Matias with the Auditor's Office.
Thank you.
I'm Mike Zeller. I'm a sidewalk inspector with Maintenance Operations.
Thanks, Mike.
Lee Munson, supervisor on sidewalks.
Thank you.
This ordinance is for sidewalk repair on property that is required by the city. Any remonstrances have been pulled from this assessment and are not in this ordinance.
So there's no objections pending before us? Okay. Carla, is anyone here to testify on this item?
Sorry, Mr. David Elton requested to speak, but
I don't see
he's not
him.
here.
Any other public testimony?
Did he file a remonstrance?
No, not to my knowledge.
Okay.
Very good. Then this passes. And Commissioner Daly, anything else on this? And this passes to second reading.
Mayor, before we adjourn, can I just clarify something?
Certainly.
Because we didn't have the requisite quorum, we've set over emergency item 355. But I believe this is time sensitive. Is it your intention to have this brought back this afternoon or tomorrow afternoon? So that we can act on it. It's just a minor modification to a contract.
If we have 4 people available this afternoon, I'd be happy to take that up.
Carla?
This afternoon after the time certain issue. We have a rather lengthy time certain at 2 p.m.
Commissioner Fritz is expected back at 2 o'clock.
Okay, so
Right,
why
so
don't
can
we
we set this over till this afternoon?
Let's set it over till this afternoon, and time permitting, we'll do it at the end.
Okay,
And why don't we also move the rest of the consent agenda?
Okay, and 356 as well.
Yes, but we'll do it at the end. We'll do the time certain first.
Okay.
Good. There being no further business before the council, we're adjourned until 2 p.m. Thank you.
So,